Trump just did what no American president has done in this generation. He returned to Beijing as the sitting president after almost 9 years of distance between the two greatest powers on the planet. He entered the Chinese capital with state honors. He sat before Xi Jinping at the center of communist power and brought with him a delegation that turned the visit into a demonstration of national strength. This Thursday, May 14, 2026, the scene drew attention because Trump did not come to China to ask permission. He came to size up Xi Jinping up close to test how much control Beijing still has over its own game, and to show that Washington is once again speaking with authority before the United States' biggest strategic rival. While other nations face China trying to survive the pressure, Trump steps into the center of Chinese power, bringing the pressure back. The visit was marked by an official reception at the Great Hall of the People, a direct meeting between the two leaders, and an agenda filled with trade, Taiwan, Iran, technology, and energy over a 2-day schedule. After a gap that was not just about the calendar but about power, the last sitting American president to visit China was Trump himself in November 2017. Since then, the relationship between the two nations has gone through a trade war, disputes over chips, tensions over Taiwan, military pressure in the Indo-Pacific, and a struggle for economic influence. Now Trump returns to the same center of Chinese power but with a new element. He returns as a leader who tries to turn China from a confident challenger into a government pressured to negotiate. I'll tell you all about that in a moment, but right now you'll want to be subscribed to the channel to stay well informed. Real-time information with the best journalistic quality ever seen, following the credibility standard of Milson Alves. The greatness of the event lies in the way the trip was arranged. Trump did not show up in Beijing. Surrounded only by diplomats, he brought a business delegation with names connected to the top of the American economy. In the international news, executives from Tesla, Apple, Nvidia, Qualcomm, Boeing, BlackRock, Blackstone, Goldman Sachs, and Citigroup appear. These are companies involved with artificial intelligence, semiconductors, electric cars, aviation, banking, investments, and global supply chains. The message is simple. Trump brought a living embodiment of the United States' economic strength into China. It wasn't an empty table. It was Washington arriving with market power, technology, capital, and industry all together. Beijing tried to respond by making Taiwan the center of the pressure campaign. Xi Jinping warned that the Taiwan issue is the most sensitive point in the relationship between China and the United States. And he indicated that any mistake in this area could lead to a direct clash between the two powers. That was the Chinese message, reminding Trump that the island remains the most explosive issue for Beijing. But Trump arrived with a card that no other president had ever brought into China in this way. The crisis in Iran and the importance of the Strait of Hormuz changed the calculation. China depends on energy routes that pass through areas where the American military presence still matters. If Beijing tries to use Taiwan as a threat, Trump can use energy, economic pressure, and maritime security as a response. This is the point that turns the visit into a reckoning. On one side, Xi Jinping tries to show that Taiwan cannot be treated as a minor detail. On the other, Trump shows that China also has weak points. The Strait of Hormuz, through which a huge portion of the world's oil passes, has become part of the conversation. Because the war against Iran and instability in the Gulf directly affect Chinese interests. The harshest sign for China is that this visit did not come about in a calm atmosphere. The news showed a sensitive agenda, surrounded by difficult topics and last-minute pressures. The war in Iran began to weigh on the meeting. While Trump was seeking some kind of Chinese cooperation to contain the crisis, at the same time, Beijing was trying to maintain its position on Taiwan and preserve its image as a strong power. This combination made the meeting feel like a real confrontation, not a staged ceremony. Trump entered the Great Hall of the People knowing that China wanted respect, but also knowing that Xi Jinping needed to avoid a rupture with the United States. At a delicate moment for the Chinese economy, China's fragility shows in the details. Xi Jinping welcomed American executives and stated that China would open its doors even further to foreign investment. This statement carries weight because it comes from a government that needs to regain trust, attract capital, and prevent the exodus of strategic companies. China is still a giant, but it can no longer sell the image of limitless growth to the world. The economic slowdown, investor insecurity, and tighter political control have created friction. Trump, by bringing American businessmen to Beijing, put Xi in an uncomfortable position. China still needs American companies. The effect was immediate. The visit became major news around the world because it showed that the dispute between the two powers has entered a more direct, more personal, and more dangerous phase. For those who miscalculate, history helps to understand the significance of this gesture. History offers another strong parallel. In 1853, when the United States sent Commodore Matthew Perry to Edo Bay in Japan with steamships, modern weaponry, and a clear demand for opening up trade. At that time, Japan was closed off under the Tokugawa shogunate, trying to control contact with foreign powers and preserve its internal order. Perry did not arrive as a tourist nor as a weak messenger. He appeared with the visible strength of a rising industrial power, showing that the world had changed and that Tokyo could no longer pretend that external pressure did not exist. The Convention of Kanagawa, signed the following year, opened Japanese ports to Americans and accelerated a profound transformation within Japan. This example helps to understand the scale of Trump's trip to Beijing. The strength is not only in the speech, but in the whole package that comes with the leader. Perry brought ships and commercial pressure. Trump arrives with companies, capital, technology, energy, and accumulated political power. China is not the closed-off Japan of the 19th century. But the logic of pressure is similar when a power enters the symbolic territory of its rival, carrying real instruments of power. The visit becomes a message. Trump didn't cross the planet just to talk. He entered the Chinese capital to show that Beijing also has limits, dependencies, and sensitive points that Washington can reach. Other nations have challenged China before, but almost always paid the price without having the same stature to respond. Australia felt this when it faced Chinese trade coercion after advocating for an investigation into the origin of the pandemic. Lithuania also suffered economic retaliation from Beijing after allowing the opening of a representative office linked to Taiwan on its territory. The Philippines experiences constant tension in the South China Sea, with Chinese vessels pressuring routes, islands, and disputed areas. These nations resisted, denounced abuses, and sought external support, but none of them entered Beijing. The ability to impose an immediate global cost on China, that's where Trump sets himself apart from the others. He arrives representing the nation that still holds the most coveted market, the most influential financial system, and the technology companies that Beijing cannot easily replace. And the military power that bears on critical maritime routes. That's why the visit has such significance. While other nations face China trying to survive the pressure, Trump enters the center of Chinese power, bringing pressure back. Taiwan becomes a Chinese threat, but Hormuz, Iran, energy, American capital, and technological access become cards in America's hand. That's the difference between reacting to China and forcing China to react. I'm Milson Alves, an international relations specialist, and my purpose is to keep you well informed with the truth every day. The news links are in the video description. Leave a like on this video, subscribe to the channel, and at the end check out the comments so you can be even more engaged with the community. Milson Alves.